Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Hockey Hacks podcast, a proud member of the Hockey Podcast Network and the official podcast of Left Wing Lock. I'm Devin Davidson, your host. With me, as always, Bruce Gunther. John Enns is not with us tonight. He's traveling through Alberta, somewhere in the mountains. We're not really sure where. And Tyler Homan joining us as well. We got a special guest tonight, Cody Janzen. He is the play-by-play voice of the Saskatchewan Rush on TSN and ESPN, and also the host of the World Hockey Report, a fellow member of the Hockey Podcast Network as well. So, Cody, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here, guys. Excited to talk about all things hockey, sports, whatever we want to get into.
All sorts of good stuff. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. This is good. There's been a lot of news here the last few days, so there should be no shortage of things to get to. So tonight, episode 70, we're going to cover the NHL free agents or free agency coming up here. We'll do a draft recap. We'll talk about sports in general, like Cody alluded to, whether that's the Saskatchewan Rush or other. But let's start with you, Cody. So obviously, like I said, World Hockey Report, you work for the Saskatchewan Rush as well?
Yeah, I am a play-by-play voice for them, so that keeps me busy during the NLL season. Then I also work up in Edmonton at 630 Ched, so doing a lot of sports and Oilers stuff up here. Also hosting World Hockey Report, so a little bit of everything. But again, my whole life revolves around sports, so it's awesome to be able to work in lacrosse and work in hockey on a daily basis.
And you mentioned earlier you were born in Warman, so you're from this area that we kind of...
Yeah, I'm a Saskatchewan guy through and through. So yeah, born in Warman, raised south of Swift Current on a farm down by Wymark, if anyone has a clue where that is. But yeah, then moved to Alberta, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. But jumped around a little bit playing hockey, so I got to experience a few different provinces and states.
Cool. What level of hockey did you play at?
Juniors mostly, and then a little bit overseas, some minor pro, but nothing worth noting.
Well, you had some fun anyway.
Oh yeah, a lot of fun. Too much fun. That's why I'm here.
That's good. That's great. And then, so broadcast school, is that how you kind of got into where you're at now?
Yeah, I went to Western Academy there in Saskatoon, and didn't last the full time. I was one of those who maybe departed a little early, but no, I got lucky enough. I had an opportunity to, and so kind of just talked it over, and they were like, well, you're probably not getting anything better. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll just be a college dropout, and so far it's worked for me.
Yeah, no kidding. Fantastic. I'm interested about your work on Oilers now, because I listen. I'm an avid listener of the show myself. I know, Tyler, you tune in quite regularly. What's it like working with Bob over there at 630 Ched?
Oh, Bob's great. He's again, that guy's forgot more about hockey than I'll ever know. So there's just, any sort of like weird, quirky Oilers fact, he just knows it. So again, it's fun. I love the passion Oilers fans have. Right? It's very almost Saskatchewan-esque when you look at how much Saskatchewan loves their sports teams, whether it's the Rush, whether it's the Riders. Like, Oilers fans are every bit as passionate, if not more. And so seeing the interaction, like working with Bob, working with Brendan, everyone there is awesome. But it's really the fans that make the show, right? Because they're the ones pushing through the text line, the calls, getting the guests all going and stuff like that. So it's a fun show to be on. It's an awesome sports city to be in. And again, it's a lot more fun when they're winning. I'll tell you that for free.
Yeah, no question. Well, so what was your take on their playoff run here? I mean, was there one or two things that stuck out in your mind?
Well, they're just kind of old in some positions. I think that, you get banged up and everyone gets injured, but clearly they just didn't have that depth. They had the top end skill that you need to go on a playoff run, that you need to win a Stanley Cup, but you still need that depth scoring through and through. You need a little bit more of a thicker blue line, in my opinion. And of course, you can't be having a goaltender with a 4 goals against average. It's just not going to cut it for you. Not to say Smitty was bad by any means, but he wasn't stealing them games. And sometimes to win a cup, you do need a goaltender to steal you games. Look at Vasilevsky the past 2 years. And I'll say game 6, I think that Darcy Kemper came in there, and especially in the third period, he was the one stealing them the win. When Tampa was putting on some pressure late, you need that goaltender to be your rock.
Yeah, no question. Well, since we're on that subject anyway, let's maybe just go a little bit off script here. I just like to chat about the Oilers. Obviously, all three of us here are Oilers homers, I guess you could say. So what's your take on what's going on here? We're hearing lots of things about, obviously, Jack Campbell. That appears by all stretches to be almost a done deal at this point. What's your take on Jack Campbell as a goaltender?
He's unproven as a starter. It worries me. I like him as an upgrade to Mikko Koskinen, obviously. He's not an upgrade on a prime Mike Smith when Mike Smith is playing his best. But again, the consistency issue, that's a whole nother topic. But if he's going to come in at $1 million cheaper than Darcy Kemper, I think you're helping your team out by taking that sacrifice and kind of going after Campbell. But also, we got to, take a step back, and there's 2 goalies on the market right now, and there's about 6 teams that need starting goaltenders. So, yeah, maybe Jack Campbell is all but a done deal, but I'm still worried that Wednesday morning we're going to wake up and someone's offered him a 6x6 or, something stupid. And the Oilers are like, well, that's going to handcuff us a little bit. Like, didn't expect to be paying those prices. I think clearly what we're seeing is that there is a lot more demand for goaltenders than there are goaltenders on the market right now. So someone's going to be overpaying for them. And you kind of hope it's the Oilers because they need some of that position. But also, if not, are they doing themselves a favor and then just going out of their way and trading for a guy who's got that starter experience? Because Campbell's only played 50 plus games once in his career or so, like that. Like it's not a healthy amount here.
No, we're going in with a relatively unproven tandem with Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner. And how do you see that split working next season? Do you think it's going to be close to 50-50? We're talking 60-40. What's your take on it?
No, you need a 50-game guy, and then you want Stuart Skinner to play 30. Like Stuart Skinner's not going to come in and knock your socks off, but if he can play 30 against some of those bottom teams, you throw him in on back-to-back, stuff like that. If he can give you 30 solid nights, I think then you're laughing. But you still need that healthy guy to give you 50. Like, that's not an easy target to hit in the NHL anymore. There's not a lot of goalies, especially out west, where it's even more rare because of the travel. There's not a lot of guys that can do that. So I don't know. I would love to see them. And I know John Gibson does not want to come to Edmonton. It's probably the last place he wants to be. But at some point in time, maybe it does come down to Ken Holland overpaying and just trading for a goaltender instead of saying, let's hope Jack Campbell works out. I don't know if I'm ready to be hoping with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl up front.
We've only got so many prime years left of those 2 guys, right? So we have to utilize them as much as we can. I guess let's move to forwards here a little bit. I'm like Evander Kane. What I heard is it's 4 times 4.75 was the offer they made to him. Which, I mean, I'm not an agent, I'm not a GM, but to me that seems like it's just not even in the ballpark from Evander Kane's side.
Well, guys, I mean, you tell me if someone goes and offers them 5 by 7.5 on Wednesday, you're not going to be shocked. Like, no one's going to be like, oh my goodness, $7.5 million for Evander Kane. No one's going to be shocked here. So yeah, 4 by 4.75 or whatever's being reported out there, it's clearly low, but maybe, again, I'm not in these GM meetings. Maybe they want him to go to market and say, hey, see what else is out there. See if you'll have fun playing in New Jersey. Winning 25 games next year. See if that's what really makes you happy, or take a pay cut, come here and win some damn hockey games.
That's what I'd like to see. Just come here and win some damn hockey games. Other forwards of note, what is your take on this? Do you think, like, Dylan Strome is out there? There's a sense he'll potentially get signed. We're looking at Connor Brown. We've been hearing lots about Connor Brown.
Clearly Oilers Now listeners.
Right? Like, these are all guys Stauffer keeps mentioning. Josh Anderson. Stauffer has mentioned Josh Anderson many times. So I just, none of those guys though compare to Kane. Like whether it's fantasy or real hockey, I don't see it working as well as if we have Kane in town. And Giroux,
there's like 5 of us on World Hockey Report, so you have zero clue whose tweets you're actually seeing out there. But I tweeted out the Matthew Tkachuk thing, and I'm proud of that today because what if the Oilers do just decide to overpay? Like if the Flames aren't going to give him 8, and that kind of sounds like what he's wanting, 8 to 8.5, would you overpay for a Matthew Tkachuk to have him playing around, buzzing around the ice with McDavid and Draisaitl? Like, there's no one in the West that can do what Matthew Tkachuk does. I know he sucked in the playoffs last year, but their whole team was kind of a letdown. Let's be real. Flames there. But I think Matthew Tkachuk's a guy you got to target, no?
Absolutely. Tyler, what's your thoughts? I if I could, I'd overpay for Tkachuk, no question.
Absolutely. There's no way that happens, though. Like, they're going to get him done. I don't think they get Gaudreau done, but they get Tkachuk done.
What do you think they pay him, Tyler?
Kachuk?
Yeah.
I think he's probably 8.5. I think he's 8 times 8.5, especially if they lose Gaudreau. And he's worth that because there's nobody else. Who else is going to do that? Who else is going to do what he does? And I mean, this year that he got however many points he did, 90-some points. I don't see that happening again. This year was kind of up for all kinds of guys for crazy point totals.
I just think Brad Treliving's going to fumble the bag here and probably lose both of them. Like, if there's a GM I have little faith in right now, it's Brad Treliving, where he's been in on every single superstar and hasn't been able to pull out the purse when needed. Like, you could have had Jack Eichel in Calgary, Mark Stone. Like, there's so many of these big names that the Oilers should be playing against, and you're just laughing because you're like, Brad Treliving's their GM.
He's a slightly better Tambellini. Tambellini did the same thing. Just like,
comparison.
I don't know, I'm scared. And then they go somewhere else.
That's fair.
Same thing. And I'm not upset about it at all.
I've been saying for a while, I think Gaudreau's on his way to town because he's got, 8 times 9.5 in his back pocket, and he still hasn't signed.
No, New Jersey will chuck him 10 or something, I think.
And he'll go back out.
They're saying the Islanders are in as well. I was hearing a lot of Islanders rumble today. So that's they've got the room. But again, are they wanting like to throw it all in one basket just so he can play with Barzell? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd want to go there. I think it's Jersey.
That makes more sense. It's actually an up-and-coming team, right?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else Oilers, Tyler, you want to mention? Puljujarvi. Let's talk about Puljujarvi because, Cody, I know you've seen the tweets all over the internet.
Never seen them.
Never seen them. Don't know what you're talking about. What's your assessment of the situation here?
You got to trade him. You got to give him a fresh start. He doesn't want to be a third liner. And that's where he is on the Oilers right now. Like, everyone goes, oh, well, start of the season, he put up points. He can put up points playing with McDavid. Well, so can Alex Chase on it. I'm not even sure he's in the league anymore. Like, everyone's going to put up points with Connor McDavid. Let's be realistic. So if Puljujarvi is really that distressed by having to prove himself to be in the top 6, or he's not going to be happy with a third line role or play that role, then I think you got to move him. You got to do what's best. I was a little shocked they didn't just, trade him out for maybe a second round pick at the draft. Like, I thought there was some, opportunity to just say, cut ties completely. Don't even, worry about giving him a qualifying offer or anything like that. Guess they see it differently. Maybe he's had a change of heart, but I got to think that a reason for keeping him is in a trade, he could garner an actual player now. Seeing the market, seeing what's being moved around. Maybe you do package Puljujarvi, and I don't know, maybe I think Tyson Barrie's probably leaning towards staying now, the way that things have been moving around. But they're going to have to make some moves to be a contender in the West. So maybe Puljujarvi does garner you an actual roster piece that'll be effective on your third line. Like, guys, who are you picking right now? If you got to choose one to be on your lineup opening night, are you taking Jesse Puljujarvi? Or are you taking Nick Delorier?
I'd say Puljujarvi. I think Delorier is going to get the old Clutterbuck contract, and somebody's going to be sad about it in 3 years.
Well, I think the ask was 4 by 2 for his agent. That's kind of what's out there, 4 by 2 million. So I'm just meaning dynamic of a depth player that I would rather see in Edmonton. And I know Puljujarvi's price point is going to be higher because he's got points, but I just don't see that as a guy you win with come playoff time. I don't.
No, I see him getting traded after free agency, after teams have swung and missed on guys and kind of want to fill something out. And Edmonton has swung and hopefully hit a couple guys and see where their roster kind of shakes out. And then you kind of decide what you want to take for him. I just don't think he comes back.
The market's so soft for Puljujarvi too. Like Drager reported, they're disappointed with the reception for Puljujarvi, and I find that interesting because his advanced analytics and his wowies, Tyler, as you like to call them, they look great, but nobody seems to care. If the market, if Puljujarvi was such a hot player, why aren't their GMs falling over themselves to grab him?
He just I think other teams see that he's fragile, emotionally, not physically. Just if he's not playing on the top 2 lines, then he wants to go back to Finland or whatever. I think other teams see that kind of stuff and are worried about if they bring him in, if he doesn't get the right minutes, is he going to want to sign another contract? Is he going to want to leave there too? And that's why I think Edmonton has to trade him.
Agreed.
I would have just drafted Kachuk and just not have to worry about any of this.
Bruce, somebody mute Bruce.
We're not going back there. I still think they need some help on defense here too, the Oilers. I wonder, like, my pipe dream is they go and they try and acquire Chychrun. Is there any and is it a fit on the team? Like, does he fit in their current roster?
How good
Absolutely.
would a Jeff Petrie look on this roster? Like, that's one guy who you're looking back and be like, oh, that would have been nice. I like Chychrun, but I also just see Chychrun as a little bit of an upgrade on a Barrie almost. Like, when I think of mean, tough defense that help you win in playoffs, I think of your Brett Kulaks. I think of your Ben Sherratt. You know, Sergachev's been so good in Tampa Bay. McDonough. Like, they're those kind of not greasy D-man, but just gritty guys on the back end. I'd rather see them load up with that. Like, you only need one Evan Bouchard, you know, Broberg. I again, if you're going to ice a team with Broberg, with Bouchard, with Barrie on the back end, maybe even a Niemelainen, like, now you're getting a little bit soft for me. And again, I'm one of the guys who is wanting Chris Russell to play in playoffs a little more because I think there's a ton of value in block shots and just hits in the corner. But I don't know. I think you just got to get mean on the back end, and I don't see Chychrun bringing that. Great price point, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of value there for sure. And for me, I would see them moving Barrie out and trying to bring Chychrun in, right? Absolutely, because there's some redundancies there. Provorov is on the market too. That's another guy maybe you take a look at. I don't know. Any thoughts on him?
Do you guys hear this story? Has anyone told you the story about when he came over to the Dub and as like a 16 or 17-year-old supposedly? And everyone was convinced that he had a fake passport. I don't know. I can't remember who actually broke this story. Someone was telling it to me. So, like, when I was 14, 15, I was at Wheat Kings camp. And this was like later on when Provorov came down the road and everyone was convinced that they got him like a fake birth certificate. And he was like 2 years older than he was. It's like the whole Ovechkin's older than he is story. But that's what I think of every time I think of Ivan Provorov, because I really want to know, like, there's got to be some way to get. I'm not smart enough for that. I like Provorov, but again, who's he an upgrade on? Who's he replacing on this lineup that you're going to go into the Western Conference final and say, I'm more comfortable with him versus X? I just don't see it.
I really like Brett Kulak. Like, they got to get that guy re-signed. But to me, you're a really deep defense if he's on your third pairing. Like, do you think he can be your third or fourth best defenseman and win a cup?
No, I think he's your number 5. I think that's fair, but he should be coming in at that 5 price point. Like, he's in his prime, but I also think he wants to win. He'll take a little bit of a hometown discount too. So if you can get him at a $2.5 million, maybe I'm being generous there. But like, I would prefer to keep Kulak in town just because he plays that playoff style that I think wins hockey games.
Sure. I would agree with that. Okay. We've talked lots of Oilers. I know the four of us could probably do it all night. We should probably move on to the NHL Draft Recap before the rest of the listeners tune us out. I guess I'll just start because there's a lot to cover here. But Cody, for you, who are your big winners for the draft and who are your big losers?
Oh, man. I think Seattle's got to be considered a winner here. Like, you get Shane Wright. And I know I was high on Slafkovsky, too. I've said it since pre-Olympics that I think this guy's a legit weapon that should be contending for number 1 overall. So I think, Seattle getting Shane Wright at number 4, you're laughing. Like, if you get Shane Wright at number 4 in any draft in the past 10 years, you're probably happy with that. So for this year, which I would consider a weak draft, I think that's a pretty damn good pick. Losers, I think it's Arizona going after Logan Cooley. I like the kid's skill. I like his speed, but I don't know how that's going to translate to the NHL. And if it does, he's probably 5-6 years away. So maybe they're waiting for the new rink to be built, and that's kind of part of their plan. But I think out of the top 10, he could be one of the last guys to actually play in the NHL, just based on the way his game actually is. So that's probably the breakdown in the, top 5 at least. I don't know. From an Oilers perspective, I like the Reed Schaefer pick. I think he brings that grit. I think he could be a good third liner one day. That's a weird thing to give someone a ceiling as a third liner, but I do like that pick. I was a little I think losers probably Carolina. Like, what do they draft? Like 4 Russians or something? Like, I don't know. I think that's a big loser pick. Like, if you're trying to be buddy with Gold Star and Milstein, like for 1 year, a loser in my books. But also, like, I don't know, read the room here. If there's one that you're super high on, sure, but yeah, that's I guess Carolina probably a loser. And honestly, I can't think of a bigger winner than Seattle. Like, do you guys have a bigger winner than getting Shane Wright at number 4?
I like what Montreal did. I think like for them to take Slavkovsky was a good pick, and then obviously to go and grab Doc. I thought like I still think there's some upside with Doc. I think he's been fighting some injuries with his wrist. Still, it was mangled, right? I mean, it's going to take some time to recover from that. So. I like what they did at the draft, but no, for me, Seattle for sure. Because then they took, was it Furcus or Jagger Furcus? Right? So, like, I mean, yeah, two good picks. And, like, to get Shane Wright at 4 was ridiculous. I agree with you. I think Arizona should have deviated a little bit from their Logan Cooley pick.
I think Chicago was the biggest loser.
Yes, and I'll agree with that too.
Draft day in general.
No. Yeah,
how does Kyle Davidson have a job? That's I don't like ripping on GMs. Like, I think I joke that Brad Treliving's not great at his job. Kyle Davidson.
It felt like bring your kid to work day, and it was Kyle Davidson. Like, even today, like the guys that they bought out, they didn't even have to buy out one of those guys, and it's like they're doing it for fun. Like, who's gonna play on the team next year?
Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
It's the reason why they're doing this. It's Connor Bedard.
Again, wouldn't you want to see Bedard play with DeBrincat, play with Kirby Doc? Like, there's so many guys who they're just like, see you later. Let's have a 40-year-old Jonathan Taves play with Connor Bedard. You can't keep up to the guys as is already.
Do you know what's going to be great is when they lose the draft lottery and end up picking 4th and miss out on Michkov and or whatever his name is and Bedard. So
yeah, there's no guarantees, right? There's no guarantees. It's an obvious tank job, which whatever.
I mean, Jones though. So
oh man, and that's the worst part is last year they went and they got Fleury, they got Seth Jones, and then they're just doing a 180 here, and they've decided that we're going to take a different direction. It is weird. And to your point, Cody, like I don't understand why they didn't try and move out Kane and keep DeBrincat. Like I get that he had a $9 or $9.5 million qualifying offer for DeBrincat, but he's a young player. So is Doc. Like those are two guys. If you're doing a rebuild, you want them. And I've heard Frank Saravelli say that by the time the rebuild is complete, DeBrincat's going to be mid-age by hockey standards. While he's going to be in his prime at 28 years old. Like why not keep him? It's a strange decision all around.
Okay, you guys are Oilers fans too. Like, remember when Oilers Nation, not like Oilers Nation the page, just Oilers fans in general, were so up in arms about losing like Caleb Jones and Ethan Bear, and now like I haven't heard Caleb Jones's name in a year, and Ethan Bear is the 7th D-man in Carolina. So I just like talking with actual Oilers people about that.
I never truthfully I didn't understand. Like Ethan Bear is fine, but for people to get so up in arms about that trade was like. What, like honestly, because look at the situation now. Caleb Jones was never going to be more than your 6 or 7 D man, right? That just wasn't.
I think what people are upset about too is taking Keith at a full cap hit, and honestly, it worked out great. Like, Chicago wasn't going to retain salary because they knew there's a chance if he does retire, we're going to take that cap hit. We can't take that cap hit plus retained. Yeah, and it worked out great. So.
Yeah, I think people were way too worked up about the Ethan Bear trade.
I think that got a little political too.
Well, of course it did. But I mean, I just looking at the play, keeping it on the ice or to fantasy. Sorry. Stay in your lane, Tyler.
Sorry about that.
Anyway,
the Oilers should have traded Keith back to the Blackhawks for Seth Jones. That would have been great.
Hey, Kyle Davidson might have did it.
I know. Just float it out there and see if he takes it.
But okay, so Cody, Kane's not going to be there the whole season. But pretty good chance he's going to be moved at some point. Whether it's, I actually just read, he is going to submit a trade request on Wednesday. I don't know if it's a credible source or not, but his preferred destination is the Rangers. He wants to go play with Panarin.
Yeah, I mean, Showtime's going to love that, right? He's got that Panarin connection already. He sees the Rangers have a goaltender. Like, he's won Stanley Cups, and what did every single Stanley Cup the Blackhawks had? Well, they had a consistent goaltender there that, took him. So he sees Shesterkin, and he goes, okay, this is a guy who can get me a ship. So the Rangers make sense. Are the Blackhawks going to eat half of his salary, though? Like, can the Rangers really afford that? And if the Rangers are going to be paying full price, aren't they going to kill their depth in a situation where the East in general is just getting better? Teams are getting deeper. So now they're going to kind of hurt their depth just to bring in a Patrick Kane who's well out of his prime.
I think you bring in a third team like Arizona to make that work. And
you could. You could. But the way Kyle Davidson's on Yahoo Fantasy Manager, is that even a consideration for him?
I don't know. Maybe Chris Drury gives him a call and tells him how to do it properly.
Walks him through it.
But Kane there, I think Taves leaves too. Kane, if he leaves right now and doesn't end up playing the season with basically no centerman on that entire team, he could probably get a Chris Letang kind of contract after this year. He could probably get 5 years after this. If he stays in Chicago, maybe he has a really down year and people only want to give him 3. So it's a smart move for him to want to move right now.
Absolutely.
I don't think their bank accounts are hurting though. Like these, again, Kane's a partier for sure. But I think that they're also, like you saw when they were in their prime, like they were so driven to win. It's an incredible focus that you have to have for a team like Chicago to go on that many runs. So like, I feel like they would be the psychopaths to take $1 million just to be on a winning team. Like that's just the type of guys I mentally envision them being. But again, time will tell, right?
I think just the way with the NHL and the PA and the way everything is kind of right now, they're trying to push for as much dollars as possible. So I don't think that they would go out of their way to do that. Like Timo Solani would have done that, but that was a long time ago.
Different circumstances. Everybody now, like players and agents, are concerned about the market, setting the market and setting a precedent, right? So they rarely take less money to go places.
Like Valerie Nikushkin.
Like look at that.
I don't know if he was in the notes to talk about, but that is absolutely ridiculous.
He's in here to talk about.
He's in there.
Yep. I mean, he had a great season.
I should probably read those notes.
Every once in a while you should, but you're just the talent. You're just a pretty face, Tyler, to show up and talk.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back on track here talking about the draft. So obviously before things really kicked off, we had a few trades here, right, and some signings. So Chris Letang, 6 years, $36.6 million, a $6.1 million AAV. He was 7th among D-men in scoring last season. I'm surprised they gave him 6 years. Like, to me, I understand you want to try and continue winning while Sid is still there, but now it looks like Malkin's on his way out of town. So, Cody, what's your thoughts on their situation there with Letang and Malkin and what they're doing? And they just signed Rickard Rakell as well.
Yeah, I think Raquel, you got to re-up. But I think they kind of fumbled the football there on Chris Letang. Like, this is an injury-prone old defenseman that if you are truly serious about winning with Sid again, it doesn't really make sense. Unless Sidney Crosby went to Ron Hextall and said, hey, you better sign him or, I'm going to be pissed off, then sure, that's fine. But it did seem like a little bit of a weird move. And now you got Malkin pissed off and like, I don't know. I don't think Crosby's going to be that mad if Malkin walks, but maybe it was Letang's the difference maker. He says, hey, we got to keep this guy for some of our young defensemen coming up. Maybe that's the thing. Seems like a pretty high price point, though. Like, he's got to be buying his agent a few bottles of Camus.
I'm sure he will be. Okay, the other thing that happened was Alexander Georgiev traded to the Colorado Avalanche. And then Joe Sakic came out and actually said that they had acquired Georgiev with the intention of using him as their starter.
Yeah, then they gave him a starter salary, too. What's he making, 3.5?
Yeah. 3.4, yeah.
Did he not watch the East at all last year? Like, with that, the Nichushkin trade, like, those are some questionable moves, Joe. I don't know. Like, I don't think Georgiev's a starter. No. That guy was, he couldn't handle the pressure of playing against Edmonton once in his career. Like I've never watched a game that the Rangers played, and albeit I've probably seen him a dozen times, I've never been like, wow, Georgiev, that's a starting goaltender. Like, no, that's never crossed my mind. He's an undersized goaltender that allows goals through his body. There's nothing to like about that. Maybe it's because Colorado thinks, oh, he'll fit well in our system. But I think Pavel Francouz is probably your number one next year then.
I think that they just won with league average goaltending, so they don't care. And I think Toronto's doing the same thing right now with Matt Murray. They're
paying Matt Murray $5 schmil.
Yeah.
Well, and they can't outscore their troubles like Colorado can. Not to the same degree, anyway.
But I think that they're thinking they can.
Yeah, that's their hope.
Yeah.
Well, and to be fair to Matt Murray, so there was a stretch of about a month where he had a .940 save percentage, and he actually looked like a starter again. But I get it. Like when there was talk about Kenny Holland grabbing Matt Murray, I almost threw up.
Yeah,
Like,
stop it.
yeah.
Sounds like someone's been reading Jay Fresh's page here. Oh, there's a stretch where he had good analytics. Time for the calculator kids to go to bed. It's Matt Murray here. Like,
yeah.
I threw out the stat too. He's the only, he's 2-0 in game sevens, and he's the last goalie to beat Andre Vasilevsky in a game 7. So like,
what else do they need?
That's awesome. But like, let's just look at the team here. Like, let's be realistic. It wasn't Matt Murray saving the day.
The thing I like most about that actually is all the Toronto fans and media now are really trying to like build this up as though it's not that bad, right? There's good stretches of games played, so it's okay. Okay, well we could shit on those guys all day, but we won't do that right now. I guess the other big winners we didn't talk about in the draft has to be the Ottawa Senators and Alex DeBrincat, right? Like, did we really get into that yet? What's your take, guys, for fantasy purposes? I don't really see his value changing a ton. Obviously, his line mates are going to be a downgrade from Patrick Kane, but I think he's going to get a lot of power play time like he did. He's a volume shooter still. The Senators were oddly competitive despite not winning a lot of games, right? So, but Cody, I like your take on it first.
Well, if he's playing top line with Norris and Tkachuk, like, you got to like that line for sure. And if they can add Giroux, like their second line with like Stützle, Giroux, like they're building something all right there. But you don't have DeBrincat on a new contract. Like, I expected as soon as that trade goes down, give us a contract. What's his next deal looking like?
Yeah, I wonder if
walk essentially next summer. That's a tough look.
I mean, it wasn't terrible. Like, I kind of looked at it and went, that's all they got for DeBrincat, but maybe that's why. Maybe they didn't have a contract waiting because they only gave him a couple of draft picks here. What else we got here? We talked about Kirby Dach. I guess Romanov could be a deep player. Like, he averaged almost 3 hits a game and 1.8 blocks per game. So if you're looking in a multi-category fantasy league, he may have some value in 12 or 14 team leagues. Zach Kassian off the books in Edmonton. I didn't like that. So Tyler, you probably I think would agree that was a bit of an overpay for, or not. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was, but I mean, they opened up a lot of cap space. He wasn't doing anything here anyways.
Yeah.
Once he lost the mutton chops, he kind of lost everything. So
that's great analysis. I love that.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. And I mean, like, if you look at other teams, a couple years ago, Toronto gave up Marleau and a first to get rid of him. So, I mean, they moved down a couple spots, gave up some 2042 second round pick.
Yeah.
Third round pick. I mean,
not a big deal.
They gave up just as much to hire Pete Chiarelli, so I really don't think it's that big of a deal.
All right, and then day 2 of the draft, we had some more trades. The Devils acquired Vtec Vanchek. He had, again, stretches of games where he was good last season, but for the most part, inconsistent and not a guy that I would pick as a starter if I had my druthers. 20, 12, and 6, and a .908 save percentage. So basically about as average as it gets last season.
And all the stat packs wanted to tell us that Mackenzie Blackwood was going to be one of the best goaltenders in the NHL. And now they have zero faith in him. So that's bringing in Vtec Vanchek ain't really securing your goaltending situation. It's kind of just showing you that Nico Dodge should be playing in the American League, not the NHL.
Yeah, agreed. I was going to say that Samsonov's fantasy stock actually took a bit of a bump here, but now they didn't qualify him. They didn't qualify Samsonov.
Oh, nope.
There's too many off ice issues there. Again, like anyone who's listened to Brian Lawton talk about it, like there is serious concern for this guy behind the scenes. So I'm not surprised. I think they're going to take a serious run at Kemper and Campbell. I think that they are not going to, like wow him and impress him with a $7 or $8 million contract. But I think they're going to take a serious push and say, hey, we're going all in. We don't know what we have left in this lineup. So we're just going to do it now. In the next 3 years, we are going to spend. And maybe that does attract them. But yeah, it was kind of interesting to see him not even try to trade him for a 7th round pick.
I think Malkin and Kemper end up there.
You think Malkin too, hey? They're looking at Kadri, though, too, who's the other player I'd heard in Washington.
Yeah.
Which would make sense with Backstrom out, right?
Yeah. It would. So would Malkin, though, too.
Sure, yeah. What else we got? Husso. So they traded Husso to the Red Wings. Stevie Y does it again, a 3rd-round pick for the 2nd straight year for a good young goaltender. I know, again, Cody, you'd probably say unproven, right? He hasn't played a ton of games. But I'll just say it, in stretches, he looked good last year. What's your take on Ville Husso?
But didn't they get him locked up, too? They got him a contract right away, right?
3 years, $4.75 million.
Yeah.
That's just a good GM. You make a trade and you have a deal in place, right? Now you're not trading for someone for a year. Like this is a guy where I think a 3-year term is perfect for him. Do I like him in Edmonton? No, because he's not a proven winner. In Detroit, well, they're not expected to win in the next 3 years. So now you can actually see what he's got, and it's a little bit more of a show me deal. So 3 years, you can have that time. Plus, you've got Alex Nedeljkovic as your backup net. Like you've got a little bit of a fallback option here. I liked what I saw from Husso. I don't think he's got that big game killer instinct that Jordan Binnington has, and that scares me a little bit. I like goalies that are a little crazy, hence Mike Smith, Jordan Binnington. Like, look at Vasilevsky's eyes in games. It looks like he could stab anyone in the crowd and not flinch. Like, there's a little bit of that, like, on the edge that I like in a goaltender. Like, look at Darcy Kemper chirping Corey Perry the whole season. Like, just inject that in my veins. I need goalies who are crazy. That's what I like.
All right. And then the Hurricanes actually traded Tony D plus a 7th-round pick. They just sent a pile of picks back to the Flyers. And then they signed him to a 2-year, $10 million contract. So I think from a fantasy perspective, this doesn't help D'Angelo, obviously going from Carolina to the Flyers. But it gives the Flyers their power play defense when they need, and then I guess hence why Provorov is on the market here too. But
give us a fun Twitter for like 5 hours.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right, that's kind of all we got here for the draft, unless there's anything else you guys wanted to chat about quickly. No. Okay.
I think it's funny how you guys always talk fantasy hockey, and obviously that's the name of your game with the podcast and everything. And if anyone listens to World Hockey Report, they're going to be like, "Oh, geez, Janner just shits on fantasy hockey all the time." Because I'm the worst. I'm the worst. I'll never remember to set my lineup. I'll auto set a lineup and I'll just leave it for like 4 months. Like again, I'm the worst fantasy player ever. But no, this is fun.
That's okay. We're glad you jumped on. It's good to have some different perspectives on things. I liked your comment about the calculator boys. That was good.
That always gets people going on the text line too. If you call them calculator kids, you're just the worst.
Yeah. All right. So free agency coming up here on Wednesday. Want to get into some of that. Some of these questions have aged a little bit. It doesn't seem like Giroux's an option for Edmonton anymore. Is that kind of what you're getting here as well?
Yeah, I like Ottawa as the front runner here. I think that they can offer him term, which I think is big for him. And I think that they have that younger core right now that would very much value from his leadership. As much as he would like to win, I think he would also like to see an extra $30 million in his bank account by the time his career's done.
Sure. All right.
Tyler, say something. That's again.
I mean, yeah,
if you think he's in Edmonton, I want to hear it again. I'm here for the conversation.
I mean, it's totally fair. I think for somebody like him, who is old as he is, who has never won, you would like to think, and I don't know if this is true, you would like to think that if there's an option to go to a team that looks close, where he could be one of the last couple pieces, you'd want to do that and not take the 5 or 6 year term for Ottawa to go play an hour outside of the city to where nobody really.
Well,
goes
what's
to
your
watch you
deal
play.
look like for him then? What are you offering him on Wednesday?
Like, I'd be fine at 3 times 5, 3 times 5.5, something like that. And I think that's fair for the team, and I think that's fair for the player too. That's kind of the free agent kind of bump in the price too, where you're paying a little bit more than he's actually worth.
Then I think you're probably pricing yourself out of Kane and a goalie. Because when you think about a starter at 5.5 to 6 and Kane at who knows what that guy's going to get. Like, I think that you're now cutting it too close to 20, where you still got to get these depth guys signed if you want to stay competitive. Like, you can't turn over 10 to 12 players from last year's roster and expect the same results here. You know, maybe if you lose 7 or 8, you can still be competitive. I'd be a little weary, you know, giving up my 18 mil in space to 3 guys.
And I think if you're talking to Drew, you've already accepted that Kane's not coming back. And really, if Kane wants more than 4 years, don't come back. Go somewhere else and be a problem somewhere else in year 3 to 6. Because that's exactly what he would do here. And he would handcuff Edmonton in trying to re-sign Draisaitl and McDavid in years 4, 5, and 6. And Edmonton doesn't need that. And that's why Giroux or a guy like that, even Perron would be a good fit too, at 3, and then maybe you pay the extra fourth year for the UFA kind of tax. That kind of fits into their timeline. So
I think with guys like Holloway coming up and even Bourgault, I know some aren't too high on him, but like I think the goal scoring's still gonna be there. Like not like Reed Schaefer is gonna give you much, you know, in the next 5 years goal scoring wise. But I still think that there are some young forwards in the Oilers system who in the next 3 years we're gonna see them playing big roles, like bigger than Yes and Puljujärvi will.
I know we're totally off track here, and I'm just going to say this too. But I think Edmonton needs that kind of player like McDavid. I know people are talking about Dylan Strome and Connor Brown. Like, they're just little guys that, like, Edmonton already has the guys that can score goals. You need the guys that can do everything else. I'm just worried that they're going to go in and make a Detroit kind of European-style team in this free agent period and get those little guys that don't bring what Kane and the other guys kind of brought.
So you're saying Josh Manson? That's the guy.
Well, yeah, I don't mind him.
Hey, that'd be okay if you can get Josh Manson,
like
but he's
him
going
too.
back to Anaheim. He's going back to Anaheim.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost guaranteed. Any chance we see Cam Talbot get moved because he's not happy with the situation in Minnesota?
What did Billy Guerin say? He said, like, I don't give a shit what he thinks
Yeah.
or something. Like,
I don't got shit to do. Yeah, that's what he said.
yeah, whatever. Like, I
not
get
going
it.
anywhere.
Hey, Bill Guerin's job's to put the best team possible on the ice. He knows Fleury needs a tandem goaltender. Cam Talbot's that guy. He's got to accept it. Cam Talbot's not a true ace anymore in the NHL. Like, is he a starter on more than 15 teams in the league? Like, I actually don't know that. So I don't think who's got the value or who's got the market for a Cam Talbot right now. Like, I don't know.
1 year left at 3.5. I think there's probably more teams than you'd think. And that's
Yeah, but he wants to be a starter. That's the issue.
Yeah.
He's like, what playoff team is he a starter on from last year?
Vegas?
I mean, if Robin Leonard's half healthy, he's going.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Vegas maybe makes the most sense. I think that's a fair one. But, like, if you look at the playoff teams we saw last year, I can't think of one where he would be that go-to guy in game 1 of the playoffs.
No, I could see why he would want to go, though, too, because he's got 1 year left at 3.5, and he wants an extension. He wants another contract. So you're going to get buried behind Fleury. It's going to be hard to do that.
I still think he's going to get his chance to play 40 games. And if they make playoffs, he'll probably get his chance to play some in playoffs too, knowing how Fleury's consistency is now. So, like, I don't know, maybe just be the better goaltender and then get paid. Stop trying to, get traded because you're just pissed off.
You don't have to do that. It's working.
His wife's just going to go post on Instagram and just, like, piss off the rest of his team.
She seems nice, though.
She seems very nice. Yeah, absolutely.
Short temper.
All right, let's talk about some more of the forwards or other players coming up here in free agency. So we talked about Johnny Gaudreau a bit. I still don't think he stays in Calgary, like we mentioned. Kadri, some possible destinations. I'm just going to talk about destinations for different players. You guys tell me what you think. Kadri, Washington, I think, is a very likely scenario. They also mentioned the Rangers and the Islanders are in on Kadri as well. But where do you guys see a likely landing spot for Nazem Kadri? Tyler?
I like the Washington one. I think there's definitely, a sort of fit there that, could happen naturally. I think someone brought up an interesting point too, and it's if Dallas can clear up a little bit of space here, then maybe that's a potential spot that can offer him the term he wants with, a little bit of length, can use him there as well. I don't know. He's also a wild card. Like that, does he, is this his true chance of just saying, screw it, I'm getting a payday? Or does he even consider, maybe I'll take a little bit of a pay cut and find another contender that'll, offer me a chance to win a cup. 'Cause it's not Colorado anymore. Like seeing the money, and supposedly they want to lock up Burakovsky still too. I don't know what stupid money they're going to give him, but like there's no more room for Kadri there. So I just don't see that happening.
No.
Washington, they've got the Baxter money free. Good work.
Yeah.
Washington or the Rangers.
I think if Malkin leaves, Pittsburgh could be a fit too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Evander Kane, if he doesn't sign at Edmonton, which it doesn't seem likely, where do you guys like him? Like I've kind of got Calgary, Washington, Seattle as possible destinations, but what do you think?
Seattle.
They got some money to spend.
I could see them doing like a 5 by 7.5 or something and being like, well, he's from BC, right? He's somewhere out there, right?
We'll agree with that, sure.
I know he played for the Giants. I don't know everyone's hometown. I think he's from somewhere out that way.
I think so.
So there's some sort of connection. At least I'm making it in my head. If not, whatever.
That works.
Your fans can just make their own.
We'll believe you. We'll go with it. We talked about Claude Giroux, Andre Palat. So doesn't sound likely he's staying in Tampa. I've got Seattle again as another possibility, New Jersey, New York. Any other possible trade destinations there or signing destinations?
Saw a lot of New Jersey, one link towards them. So that's when there's a lot of smoke going in that direction from some of the bigger names, that's where I trend to lead. So I think New Jersey is going to put together a fine package for him.
Okay. The only defenseman here I really want to talk about is John Klingberg. I think Carolina makes a lot of sense. They don't have really anything on the right side right now. I guess Pesce is the only full-time NHL defenseman that's signed for next season right now. So that would make sense to me, or else Seattle again, just because they've got some money and they don't have a power play quarterback.
What was Klingberg's cap hit last year?
4.5.
4.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina could definitely swing that then. That
I think he
probably makes sense.
6.
Yeah, he's probably gonna get more like 6.
Well, yeah, no, definitely. You bump it up a mill or a mill and a half, definitely. But I think Carolina makes sense, and he seemed like a guy who's got that drive to get back to a cup final. So even if that does mean a shorter term or less money, I think that's where he's gonna, be going towards.
All right, and then goaltenders we kind of already talked about, Kemper and Campbell. Really seems at this point it's Campbell in Edmonton, and then Kemper probably in Washington. I think they'll push hard. Some other thoughts were Buffalo, Toronto. Of course, Toronto's out now because they got Matt Murray. So, yeah, I'd see Washington for him. But any other thoughts there, guys?
How much do you guys think that Zach Hyman's enjoyment, is that a word? Yeah, enjoyment of Edmonton really plays in to Jack Campbell seeing that being like, oh, well, he played for the Leafs and then he went and played at Edmonton and he's having a great time. Like, that's got to weigh into it some. If you're Jack Campbell being like, that could be a market I could see myself in. Like, I think his wife is from Western Canada. Like, there's definitely things that add up for Jack Campbell. The only thing that doesn't add up in my mind is that how are the Oilers going to offer this guy a long-term deal or a price point he wants when he's only played 50 games once in his career? And has he ever been in the second round of playoffs? Like, I don't know. I mean, is this guy going to crumble or what?
You're not going to do that in Toronto anyway, so...
there you go. How many World Juniors did Jack Campbell win? 1 or 2? He won the one in Saskatoon.
Yeah.
And then the year before, no, they didn't win the year before. He had Gulpans and wherever the hell that was. So I think he's got 1 gold, the World Juniors.
I think it's a good fit too in Edmonton, especially after playing in Toronto and trying to be the number one with as much pressure as there is there. There's obviously a lot of pressure in Edmonton, but I don't even think it kind of compares to what it would be in Toronto.
Does his injury history scare you?
A little, but
Sure.
But this is where I'm coming from. Having Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen for 3 years, and all 3 years trying to get something else and never doing it, I'm okay at 4.75 or 5 times 5 for a goalie that showed that he could have good stretches. Like, what are your other options?
Well,
There really isn't
Tyler,
any.
calculator kid coming at you here, okay? So in the first 25 games for Jack Campbell,
Yeah, we know.
17,
He was
5,
a Vezina
and
Trophy winner.
he was fantastic. And he had like a 935 save percentage. He had a 944 actually in the first quarter of the season. So like he was phenomenal for the first half. He was just,
Until everyone decided to start playing serious because it's coming up on playoff time.
and that does
Oh,
matter,
shit.
right? Because the first part of the season is always a bit easier than the second half, no question. So I don't know. I'm willing to take that risk too, though, Tyler.
I see it a lot like what Kemper was in Colorado, because he had really, really good games and he had really bad games. But he's not the reason why they won. And I think Edmonton sees that as we have Draisaitl and McDavid. And look how many goals they scored in the playoffs last year. We just need not to get scored on from the other end of the ice. And we don't need the goalie to
Keeps
go
games
out.
fun, though.
Oh,
Keeps
no,
games
it
fun.
doesn't. No, it doesn't. My heart can't take it anymore. And not go out to the corner and give the puck away when you don't have to play that puck and let the goal in. And if he does that, like, they might beat Colorado. Maybe. Probably not. But you know what I mean.
Well, Colorado's going to lose some depth here too, right? So we'll see what happens. And they're running with Gorgiev and
But they're not
Francouz for
losing
next
Cale
season.
Makar.
No, they're not. That guy's unreal. but-
He's the difference maker. Hey, I know you guys listen to Oilers Now as well, and before the Husso move, I threw it out. I think they should have thrown everything at a Jordan Binnington. If you're not gonna, if I thought St. Louis was gonna try re-sign Husso, so I was like, throw a trade package towards Binnington. At least he's got that experience. He's got a little bit of that craziness that Mike Smith has. I thought that would have been a perfect fit. Now I kind of lead towards, if it's not Jack Campbell, maybe you throw something towards Sergei Bobrovsky. Maybe you see if you can pluck him out of Florida. If they can retain half of his stupid $10 million salary. Maybe you just throw an offer sheet at Jake Ottinger and overpay that kid and hope he works out. Like, if you're going to shoot for a Hail Mary right now, I think Ottinger's probably a kid you're fine with losing a couple of first-round picks for. I don't know. I just think they have to do something more. Because what if they take a risk on Campbell and he's hurt the whole time? Or what if he doesn't pan out because he can't play odd man rushes like the Oilers give up? Like, there's some sort of concern that we're going to be kicking ourselves here, looking back at that summer of July 2022. We probably should have done more for a goalie and not just gone after the easy target.
And
Summer
21
of
and
17 all
19
over
and
again.
17 and 18.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you guys are diehard Oilers fans, so you've seen it more than me, obviously. But I just think that there's a little bit of concern, maybe a little more than a little bit of concern with Jack Campbell.
I'm concerned too. I think
Yep.
the preference is Kemper if you had to pick one. But I just don't like the term and what the dollars are going to be.
and the injury concern.
Injury history there too.
Yeah.
Like, he's shown over the last
Yeah, but
5 seasons.
Campbell's
he's
just a
more
little bit
consistent.
thicker glass. I mean, there's not that much. Like, it's a little bit thicker. Like, we're talking like 1970s Coke bottles versus 1980s.
Every quarter inch matters, okay?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Life lessons from a hockey guy.
There you go.
And I'd go after Ottinger.
Yeah. I wouldn't.
I would do it. I would do it.
The other thing.
It's a pipe dream of all pipe dreams, but I would.
Yeah,
absolutely
no one
do it.
uses offer sheets. Like, I get it. It's absolutely a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little disappointing because if you could tell me today or tomorrow that you can get Jake Ottinger at 7 years for $8 million or $8.4 million, whatever that second tier offer sheet is, sign it up. That's good. I'll take him. I don't care if he had one good playoff series. I saw enough in there to make me think, okay, this guy's a legit NHL starter, and he's going to be a starter for, the next 5-6 years. And if he's a legit number one, now you got a good chance of getting McDavid and Draisaitl back when their time's up, because they're going, hey,
Yep.
we got a guy who kicks between the pipes.
Absolutely.
All right. So, well, on that note, Cody, we've had you here for just about an hour, so that's kind of the main things I really wanted to roll through with you. We've got a few things we'll maybe touch on after, but you've been generous with your time, so we won't keep you unless you want to stick around. But no, we'll probably let you get out of here if that's all right with you.
All righty, guys. Yeah, I'm down. Let's do this another time too. It's been awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks, Cody.
Take care.
Thanks.
Alrighty, there you have it. Cody Janzen, play-by-play for the Saskatchewan Rush. Oilers now. Rough. Yeah, that was great. That was good just to have some in-depth hockey discussion. We ventured away from the fantasy hockey talk a little bit.
I did the thing you told me not to do.
What's that?
I just started talking.
That's great. I don't think I've ever told you not to start talking.
Sorry about that.
I thought that was great. I think Cody really got you going. You had that was good. That was good. All right, but Tyler, it is time for your favorite part of the show. I noticed your drink was a little bit low there, so don't run away, but we're going to go through our ad read right now, Tyler. As a member of the Hockey Podcast Network, the Fantasy Hockey Hacks podcast is a proud partner of DraftKings. The action never ends at DraftKings Sportsbook, especially this summer, with tons of ways to bet on all your favorite sports. You can fuel your fandom and feel the heat of the season like never before. Plus, right now, DraftKings Sportsbook is giving new customers a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's right, make your first bet up to $1,000. And if it doesn't win, you'll get another shot to cash in. You can throw down all the major action for baseball, golf, MMA, and more. Plus, with the same game parlays, spreads, money lines, over-unders, prop bets, options feel endless. Best of all, DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Make your first deposit and get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code THPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. Check out the show notes for details. And, of course, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be accessed. All that information will be in our show notes if you need it. And then with that, there's Tyler. It's funny. He comes back just so quick right after the ad reads. All right, John is not here tonight, but we're gonna take over his segment. We got a few more things we're gonna talk about, and I don't want to linger on it too long, guys. We've been at this for an hour already. So, on John's list this week, I've got the NHL schedule maker because the Oilers and the Flames play just 3 times next season, none of which take place in the second half, which is just a friggin' travesty. So they make the list, and then of course the Chicago Blackhawks for getting very little in return for Alex DeBrincat. Meanwhile, Kane and Tace with 1 year left at $10.5 million. So those guys make the John's list this week. Bomb for Bedard. I like that one. I had hashtag bad for Bedard. Yeah, I like that one too. Bomb for Bedard. We're gonna start that one, Bruce. And then let's go through headlines here really quickly. So headlines for July 4th to the 11th. We got a few things here. Mike Greer, general manager for the San Jose Sharks. That's a big one, Bruce.
It is. I really like that too.
First black GM in NHL history. I thought that was really interesting.
I like that we're seeing kind of the next wave too, like bringing in Doug Wade, Mike Greer, like guys that we watched play now going into operations in the NHL.
And both former Oilers.
Yep. And then too, just like players we watched growing up, Haley Wickenheiser named assistant GM for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have like 7 assistant GMs now, Bruce.
Well, that's good. They need someone in there that's a winner.
Okay, Bruce, you take it away. I kind of just took over for a second there, but you go for it.
Oh, go ahead. You're doing great.
Adam Boquist, 3 years, $7.8 million. Probably not fantasy relevant, realistically. Frank Cervelli reported that Klingberg will not re-sign with the Stars. No surprise there. He plans to test the open market. I'm excited to see what Miro Heiskanen can do with a full season of no Klingberg. That's a guy I'm hoping we can get somewhere in the, 7 through 10 rounds of fantasy hockey drafts next season.
Not if I take him first.
I don't think so. Not this year. Just looking at his numbers here quickly. Calculator kid coming at you. He had just over 2.5 minutes of power play time on ice. He shot at 3.2% last season, and he was at 6.6% in 2 of 3 seasons prior to that. So I think we'll see a little bit of an uptick in his production next year.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens there with Dallas, right? With all those young players, Heiskanen, Ottinger, if he doesn't get offer sheeted away. They got Robertson, Hintz. They got lots of young players there. That's going to be fun to see.
They should be good. I agree with Cody. We should try and offer sheet Ottinger. That'd be fantastic.
Great idea.
I think so, because last year, you look at Ottinger when they called him up when they had goalie troubles. He played great for him. He did again this past season. And in the playoffs, he was absolutely lights out. So I think that's absolutely worth it.
Or swing the fences on Hellebuck.
No, I'd rather have Ottinger.
Fair enough. Sarah Volley reported mid last week, that Tarasenko has no plans to rescind his trade request. He wants to move on from the Blues, and they're also exploring the trade market for Torrey Krug.
That wasn't a great signing for them.
No, it was not. The schedule, the NHL schedule was released, so it starts the doubleheader on October 11th and then concludes with a packed 15-game slate on April 13th. Just a few fantasy-relevant notes for the schedule here. So the Vegas Golden Knights play the fewest back-to-backs next season with just 7, followed by Seattle with 8. If actually healthy, which is unlikely, Robin Lehner could be a good option. Edmonton, Dallas, and Calgary all have the next fewest back-to-back games with 10. So if by some miracle, Tyler, Jack Campbell is in Edmonton, he's healthy, and the Oilers are winning, for fantasy purposes, Jack Campbell could be a guy you want to grab.
I think so, and this feels a lot like Zach Hyman last year. Like the contract number is kind of there. The only difference is they're not actually talking to Toronto about trading the rights. This feels like it's totally done, and same with Kemper in Washington.
So I know if I want Jack Campbell, I'm gonna have to snipe him in like the 3rd round because Tyler's gonna be looking for him. But
you might have to take him in the first.
There you go.
That's okay.
Vasilevsky?
I'll grab one of Jake Ottinger or Jacob Markstrom instead.
Yeah, we'll see.
And then conversely, Columbus and New York both play the most back-to-backs with 16 next season. I don't think it really matters. Shesterkin's going to play basically every game that's not on a back-to-back or the second half of a back-to-back. And then Columbus, you're just avoiding altogether. The top 5 teams in terms of light days next season includes Anaheim with 41. No surprise there. They always have the most light days. New York with 34, Winnipeg with 34, Minnesota with 33, and Edmonton with 33. So those are some teams you want to kind of look at in terms of light days and filling out your roster, maximizing games played. And then the Bob Father Bruce mentioned Strome is not going to be qualified, which we already knew. I do think there's a real chance he gets signed in Edmonton, though. I'm not saying it's the right thing necessarily, but I really just get that sense.
To me, I feel like it's either Connor Brown or him, and I would rather have Dylan Strome than Connor Brown.
Yeah, that makes 2 of us.
I
was going to mention you too. Sorry, Bruce, to cut you off. Dylan Strome's actually like 6'3". He's not a physical player, but he is like physically a big person. So
yeah,
take that for what it's worth.
Well, and I think you could do the 2 years, $3 million each or something like that. Kind of like this is going to work out for you deal and for us.
Yeah.
And
Try and raise your value, right?
Yeah, and I think and they get that second year in there because maybe a lot of other teams aren't going to do that. And I think that's something I hope happens because I think it'll be a good fit.
All right. Like we had mentioned earlier, Duncan Keith did retire, opening up some cap space for the Oilers. Adrian Kempe signed a 4-year deal, $22 million, $5.5 million AAV. Philip Forsberg, 8 years, $68 million, $8.5 million contract. Tyler, I know you were probably happy to see him there. You're a big Forsberg fanboy.
Yes. I think it's a decent number. It's a little bit higher than I think he's probably worth, but after a season like he just had, I think you had to be at that number. You weren't going to get him. So
I don't think it's an unreasonable number, but one thing I was going to mention is he's definitely due for regression. Same with Duchesne, same with Johansson, all those guys that had good seasons last year. Like Forsberg shot at 18.5% this past season. I think his 3-year average is like 13%. So that was up. I think his Tevish, Bruce, as you like to call it, his team's even strength shooting percentage was high as well. I think it was 11.5%. So there's some things working against him for next season. So I'd expect a bit of a step back. Just keep that in mind in your fantasy hockey drafts. Malkin's going to test free agency.
He's coming
very
to play with
interesting.
Connor.
I don't see it.
Line center.
I don't see it, but maybe.
I think he's going to get that 4th year out there because it sounded like Pittsburgh didn't want to give it to him. Didn't even make it an option.
I thought it was 5 years he was looking for.
I thought I read that they offered 3 and he wanted a 4th and they just didn't even offer that. And I think he'll get that. The problem is, like, if I'm Pittsburgh, I wouldn't do that either.
No.
I mean, the guy's averaged, I think it's like 40 or 50 games over the last like 4 or 5 years.
He hasn't played a full 82 games, Tyler, since 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
I checked it today.
Yeah. So, like, that's a problem, especially with term. But the only way he gets term, though, is to keep the cap hit down. And if a team thinks that they're close or wants to sell more tickets or jerseys, then maybe you bring him in. I don't know that I would with that 4th year.
No, his injury history scares me. I just don't think he's never been a durable player, and it's not going to get better with age. I said that on Twitter today. I just don't think it's someone I wouldn't go beyond 3 years. I don't blame Pittsburgh for what they did.
And the market might send him right back to Pittsburgh because everyone else might feel the same. It's like, well, yeah, no, we're not going to give you this because you spent half the season watching from the press box. Why would we? Why would we give you that?
Similar,
and it might just send him right back to Pittsburgh.
Similar, but a little bit different. I'm wondering about that with Evander Kane too. With letting him talk to other teams, I think it's a good move because maybe he thinks that he's going to get 7x7 or 7x6, and he goes out there and nobody's offering more than 4 years at 6.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe. And then maybe he's like, okay, well, I'll come back here.
Yeah. All right. Sonny Milano. He didn't get qualified today.
No.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Sam Steele didn't either, but he's not as well known. But yeah, Milano was a surprise. But I was reading too, like with Samsonov and Milano, a lot of it had to do because both of them had arbitration rights. And both cases, they had thought that if the players win their arbitration cases, it's more money than what the teams would want to put out. So they just opted to let them go.
Gotcha. All right. Joe Sakic was promoted to president of hockey operations. It's funny hearing Cody talk about some of his questionable moves. They said, Joe, you've had enough. We're gonna send you up to the president's office. We'll take it from here.
Hey, it worked out.
Worked out just fine. Joe did a phenomenal job. These last couple of signings were maybe a little bit questionable. Speaking of which, Nichushkin, 8 years, $6.125 million. I do like Nichushkin. He had a phenomenal year.
Absolutely insane.
But yes.
Absolutely insane.
It's not going to age well.
He's getting bought out in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like maybe 4, just so they can make the cap hit a little bit smaller. But like 8 years for a guy that was on waivers who had a good playoff run for over $6 million.
What was his career high prior to this season was like 34 points?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said in a previous podcast that like somebody is going to pay him and it's going to be an insane amount of money and Colorado's not going to do it. And they did it.
Yeah.
Like
they did it. Yeah.
Like what's even a
Dallas
comparable?
bought him out. Like
Yeah, what's even a comparable for his stats and then that contract?
I can't think of one, Tyler, honestly.
Like
I know some Oilers fans would pay Puljujärvi $6.125 million for 8 years.
That'd be stupid too.
oh god.
Yep,
I wouldn't
agreed.
do that.
Agreed. But I'm
And
just
I
saying,
like
like,
him.
that's how much Oilers fans value him, right? And
Look at
he's
Nugent
just
Hopkins. Nugent
Yep.
Hopkins.
yep.
Like he just signed for 8 years at whatever it was.
It was 5.5. Yeah, 5.1. Yeah.
Like, would you rather have Nugent Hopkins or Nichushkin?
Oh, Nuge, no question.
Nuge for sure.
Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like, there couldn't have been any reason why you had to do that.
No, I don't know. I can't explain that one, Tyler. I can't explain it. We talked about Matt Murray, so we won't talk about that anymore here. Rickard Rakell, 6-year contract extension, $5 million a year. And that does it for headlines here, guys. One thing I forgot to mention at the start of the show. Some good news here. We are now a proud new partner of Pro Hockey Life, the ultimate hockey megastore. Apparel, hockey equipment, street hockey equipment, training, fitness, in-store services, and much, much more. So, Tyler, when you're buying your gear for next year, make sure you use the link. It's going to be in the show notes.
I already clicked on it.
Thanks, buddy.
Checked it
And then the last thing here I'll mention, because we've already been at this for an hour and 10 minutes, but Ask the Hacks, guys. We're still rolling it. We're going to roll it throughout the offseason here. If you have fantasy hockey, DFS questions, or I guess no DFS at this point, but fantasy hockey questions, send them in to us, fantasyhockeyhacks@gmail.com, and get entered to win a free 1-year subscription to the Left Wing Lock iPhone app. Bruce, Tyler, anything else we want to mention before we call it a week?
No, I'm good. I think
Okay.
I can't think of anything. It's been a long week.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Well, boys, this was a fun one. Cody, thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate you spending an hour with us. That was good. We'll probably have another guest next week. I'm just lining that up now, but keep an eye out for that one. Stay tuned. If you want to follow us on Instagram, Fantasy Hockey Hacks, follow us on Twitter at FHHacks. Check out the website, fantasyhockeyhacks.com. And like I said, questions, fantasyhockeyhacks@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you next week, boys.
Good night.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, Felicia.